Stop for a second. Just stop. Before you scroll past this, before you click on something else, I need you to hear this. You're tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. No, this is deeper than that. This is the kind of exhaustion that sits in your chest, the kind that follows you into the shower, into your bed at night, into your morning coffee. You've been carrying something, haven't you? Maybe it's a conversation that went wrong 3 years ago. Maybe it's the weight of someone who left without explaining why. Maybe it's the version of yourself you keep disappointing, because no matter how hard you try, it never feels like enough. Has that ever happened to you? That feeling where you wake up and before your feet even hit the floor, your mind is already racing, already replaying yesterday, already dreading tomorrow, already exhausted by a day that hasn't even started yet. Yeah, I know that feeling too. And here's the thing nobody tells you. That heaviness you're carrying, most of it isn't even yours to hold anymore. You've just been gripping it for so long that you forgot you had a choice. You forgot you could open your hands and let it fall. This isn't just another self-help talk. I'm not here to throw motivational quotes at you and tell you to just think positive. That's not how life works. And honestly, you and I both know that advice never helped anyone at 2 a.m. when the thoughts won't stop. What this is a conversation between me and you about something we all struggle with but rarely talk about honestly, the art of letting go. Not the Instagram version of letting go where everything is sunshine and journaling on a mountaintop. The real kind. The messy, painful, beautiful, necessary kind. The kind where you finally say, I don't want to carry this anymore. And then, slowly, you learn how not to. So if you've ever felt stuck, if you've ever felt like your own mind is working against you, if you've ever wondered why peace feels so far away, even though you're doing everything right, then stay with me, because what we're about to walk through might just change the way you see yourself, your past, and your future. Let's begin. Chapter 1. When your mind won't shut up. The trap of overthinking. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're holding a snow globe. You know the kind, one of those glass spheres with a tiny little scene inside. When it's still, everything is clear. You can see every detail, the little house, the trees, the figure standing in the middle. It's peaceful. But then you shake it, and suddenly everything is a blizzard. White flakes swirling everywhere. You can't see the house anymore. You can't see the trees. You can't even see that little figure standing in the center. That's your mind when you overthink. The snow globe is fine. The scene inside hasn't changed. But because you keep shaking it, you can't see clearly. You can't find peace. You can't make a decision. You can't breathe. And the worst part, you don't even realize you're the one shaking it. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever caught yourself replaying a conversation you had days ago, analyzing every word, every tone, every pause, wondering what they really meant? Have you ever laid in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome of a decision you haven't even made yet? Yeah, that's overthinking. And it's one of the most exhausting things a human being can do to themselves. But here's what I want you to understand right from the start. Overthinking is not intelligence. It's not responsibility. It's not preparation. Overthinking is a habit. That's it. It's a pattern your brain learned at some point, probably to protect you, and now it just keeps running on autopilot even when there's no real threat. And habits, my friend, can be unlearned. The lie that thinking more means controlling more. So why do we do it? Why do we overthink? Here's the sneaky part. Overthinking disguises itself as problem solving. It tells you, if I just think about this a little more, I'll figure it out. I'll be prepared. I'll avoid the mistake. I'll protect myself. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable, right? Who doesn't want to be prepared? But let me ask you something. Has overthinking ever actually solved a problem for you? Think about it honestly. Has sitting in your head for hours, turning the same thought over and over like a rotisserie chicken, ever led to a breakthrough? Or did it just lead to more thoughts, more doubts, more anxiety? That's because overthinking doesn't give you control. It gives you the illusion of control. It makes you feel like you're doing something productive when really you're just running in circles. Like a hamster on a wheel, lots of motion, zero progress. Real clarity doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from thinking less, and feeling more, it comes from getting quiet enough to hear your own wisdom underneath all that noise. Why your brain loves the spiral. Here's something that might surprise you. Your brain isn't designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you alive. Thousands of years ago, that was useful. If you heard rustling in the bushes, your brain would scream, "Danger! Run!" And that reaction kept you from becoming someone's lunch. But fast forward to today. There are no tigers in the bushes anymore. Instead, there are emails you haven't replied to. There's that look your coworker gave you in the meeting. There's that text your friend sent that felt a little cold. And your brain treats all of that like a life or death situation. It scans for threats constantly, and it has a strong preference for the negative. Scientists call this the negativity bias. It's why you can have an amazing day, get 9 compliments and 1 criticism, and guess which one you're thinking about at midnight. That 1 criticism, every single time. Has that ever happened to you? Someone says something slightly off, and suddenly your brain is writing a whole screenplay about what it means. They don't respect me. They're going to fire me. They never really liked me. And before you know it, you've convinced yourself of a reality that doesn't even exist. Your brain is doing its job. The problem is, its job description is outdated. It's still running survival software in a world that requires emotional intelligence. And that mismatch is what creates the spiral. So, what does letting go actually mean? When people hear let go, they often think it means forget about it or pretend it doesn't matter. But that's not what letting go is. Letting go isn't about erasing your thoughts. It's about changing your relationship with them. Think of it this way. Imagine you're sitting on a park bench and people are walking by. Some are loud. Some are strange. Some are annoying. But you don't chase after every person who walks past, do you? You just let them pass. You observe them, and then they're gone. Your thoughts work the same way. They come, they go. The problem starts when you grab onto one and refuse to let it leave, when you follow it down the street and around the corner and into a dark alley of worst-case scenarios. Letting go means sitting on that bench and watching the thought walk by, acknowledging it, maybe even nodding at it, but not chasing it, not building a house around it, not making it your identity. It's choosing peace over panic, presence over prediction, Trust over terror. And it is a skill, not a talent you're born with, not something that only monks and therapists can do. A skill, one that gets better every single time you practice it. Try this right now. Before we go any further, I want you to do something with me. It'll take 10 seconds. Breathe in through your nose, slowly. Feel your chest expand. Hold it for a moment. Now breathe out through your mouth. Slowly. Let your shoulders drop. Do it again. One more time. Now, notice something. In that brief moment, your mind went quiet. Maybe just for a second, maybe two. But in that space, you weren't overthinking. You weren't worrying. You were just here. That's the beginning. That tiny pause between stimulus and response, between thought and reaction. That's where freedom lives, and you just experienced it. Jenna's story. Let me tell you about a woman named Jenna. Jenna worked in advertising. She was sharp, ambitious, great at her job, but inside, she was a wreck. Every small error felt like a catastrophe. She once sent a client email with the wrong attachment, and for the next 5 days, she couldn't stop thinking about it. They're going to drop us as a client. My manager is going to lose trust in me. This is going to follow me for the rest of my career. 5 days of mental torture over an attachment. 5 days of lost sleep, stomach aches, and imaginary conversations with her boss that never actually happened. Sound extreme? Maybe. But be honest. Haven't you done something similar? Haven't you ever blown something small completely out of proportion in your own head? Jenna eventually started a practice that changed everything for her. Every evening she'd sit down with a notebook for just 5 minutes. She called it her brain drain. She'd write down every single thought buzzing in her head. No editing, no filtering, no judging. Just dumping it all onto paper. And then she closed the notebook. She didn't try to solve anything. She didn't analyze what she wrote. She just got it out of her head and onto something she could physically close and put away. After a few weeks, Jenna started noticing something. The thoughts she wrote down almost never came true. The client didn't drop them. Her manager never brought it up. Her career didn't implode. She'd been spending all that mental energy on ghosts, things that felt real but weren't. One sentence changed everything for Jenna. That's just a thought. It's not a fact. She started saying it whenever the spiral kicked in, and slowly, gradually, the snow globe stopped shaking. The scene inside became clear again. Your takeaway, the brain drain. I want you to steal Jenna's technique. Tonight or tomorrow morning, whenever you have 5 minutes, grab any notebook, set a timer, and just write. Every anxious thought, every random worry, every what if. Don't organize it. Don't make it pretty. Just get it out. Then close the notebook. Walk away. Think of it like clearing the cache on your phone. You know how your phone gets slow when too many apps are running in the background? Your brain works the same way. All those unfinished thoughts, unresolved worries, hypothetical scenarios, they're background apps draining your battery. The brain drain is you swiping them all closed. It doesn't delete them forever, but it gives you breathing room. It gives you clarity. It gives you back some of that energy you've been wasting. A new way of being. Here's what I want you to walk away with from this chapter. You are not your thoughts. Let me say that again because I really need you to hear it. You are not your thoughts. You are the one watching the thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And that awareness, That ability to step back and observe, that's your superpower. That's the thing that separates a life lived in mental chaos from a life lived with intention and peace. You don't have to figure everything out right now. You don't have to have the perfect plan. You don't have to replay yesterday or rehearse tomorrow. You just have to be here, right now, in this moment. And in this moment, you're already enough. You're already doing better than you think. You've survived every single one of your worst days, and you're still here, still reading, still trying to grow. That counts for something. That counts for a lot. Letting go of overthinking isn't about becoming someone who never thinks deeply. It's about becoming someone who thinks with purpose instead of panic. Someone who uses their mind as a tool, not a torture device. And it starts with one breath, one pause, one choice to stop shaking the snow globe and just let the flakes settle. This is the art of letting go. Chapter 2. The Voice Inside, Taming Your Inner Critic. Let me ask you something personal. If someone followed you around all day and said the things you say to yourself, would you keep them in your life? Really think about that. You're not good enough. Why did you say that? You sounded ridiculous. Everyone else has it figured out except you. You're going to mess this up just like you always do. If a friend talked to you like that, you'd cut them off in a heartbeat. If a stranger said those things, you'd walk away. But when it's your own voice, you just take it. You sit there and absorb it like it's the truth, like you deserve it. Has that ever happened to you? That moment where you catch yourself being so incredibly cruel to yourself and you realize you would never, ever speak to someone you love that way. That voice, that relentless inner critic, is one of the biggest things standing between you and peace. And letting go means learning how to turn down its volume. You're talking to yourself more than anyone else. Here's a wild statistic. Research suggests that the average person has somewhere around 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts per day. And a huge percentage of those thoughts are repetitive. The same loops, the same worries, the same self-judgments playing on repeat like a broken record. Now here's the real question. How many of those thoughts are kind? Most of us have an internal dialogue that sounds more like a courtroom prosecution than a pep talk. We cross-examine ourselves constantly. We build cases against our own worth. And the verdict is always the same. Guilty. Guilty of not being enough. But here's what I need you to understand. That voice is not the truth. It feels like the truth because it's loud and because it's been with you for so long. But feelings are not facts. And the story your inner critic tells is just that, a story, not gospel. How the critic got its power. Your inner critic didn't just show up one day out of nowhere. It was built brick by brick over years. Maybe it started when a teacher made you feel stupid for asking a question. Maybe it started when a parent said something careless during a hard moment. Maybe it started on a playground when the other kids laughed. Maybe it started when you failed at something and nobody helped you understand that failure is not the end of the world. Somewhere along the line, you internalized a message. Something is wrong with me. And that message became a lens through which you see everything. Every mistake confirms it. Every rejection proves it. Every awkward moment reinforces it. But the message was never true. It was just a wound that never got treated. And untreated wounds don't heal. They just keep aching. Do you remember when your inner critic first got loud? Can you trace it back to a moment, a person, a feeling? Sometimes just identifying where it started is enough to loosen its grip. The difference between judgment and curiosity. The inner critic operates through judgment. Everything is evaluated, graded, measured against some impossible standard. Why did I say that? I'm so awkward. I should be further along by now. What's wrong with me? They probably think I'm an idiot. Notice how all of those are statements, declarations, final verdicts with no room for appeal. But what if you replace judgment with curiosity? That conversation didn't go how I wanted. What can I learn from it? I'm not where I thought I'd be. What's one small step I can take today? I wonder what they actually thought. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I imagined. Do you feel the difference? Curiosity opens doors. Judgment slams them shut. Curiosity says, let's explore. Judgment says, you've already failed. When you approach yourself with curiosity instead of criticism, your brain shifts from defense mode to growth mode. Instead of scanning for everything that's wrong, it starts looking for what's possible. And that's a game changer. Adrian's story. Adrian was a software developer. Smart guy, talented, well-liked by his team. But you'd never know it from the way he talked to himself. Every email he sent went through at least 4 rounds of editing. Not because he cared about grammar, but because he was terrified of sounding stupid. In meetings, he had great ideas but rarely shared them. He'd sit there, rehearsing what he wanted to say, then convince himself it wasn't good enough, and the moment would pass. His inner critic had a specific voice. It sounded a lot like his father, who used to say things like, "If you can't do it right, don't do it at all." Adrian carried that voice into adulthood like a suitcase he couldn't put down. One day, his therapist suggested something unusual. Give the critic a name. Adrian laughed at first, but then he tried it. He called the voice the judge, and something interesting happened. When the negative thoughts started, instead of absorbing them as truth, Adrian would say, "Oh, the judge is back. Got it. Thanks for the input, but I'm going to do this anyway." It sounds simple, almost silly, but separating himself from the voice changed everything, because the voice wasn't him. It was a pattern, a recording, an old tape that had been playing on repeat for decades. Adrian started replacing the old scripts. "I'm not ready" became "I'm learning as I go." "I'll probably mess this up" became "I'll figure it out like I always do." Within a few months, Adrian started speaking up in meetings. He pitched a project redesign that his entire team adopted, not because he suddenly became fearless, but because he stopped letting the judge make his decisions for him. Has something like that ever happened to you? Have you ever held yourself back, not because you couldn't do something, but because the voice in your head convinced you not to try? Practical technique. Name your critic. I want you to try what Adrian did. Think about your inner critic. What does it usually say? What does it sound like? Does it remind you of anyone? Now give it a name. Something a little ridiculous helps. Negative Nancy, worried Winston, catastrophe Carl, whatever feels right. The next time that voice starts spiraling, say to yourself, "Oh, there goes Carl again." This tiny act of naming creates distance. It separates you from the thought. It reminds you that the thought is not you, it's just Carl. And Carl is dramatic. Carl panics about everything. Carl has been wrong about 90% of the things he's ever warned you about. You can acknowledge Carl without obeying him. Building a kinder inner voice. Here's a practice I want you to try every night before bed. It takes less than 2 minutes. Write down 3 things you did well today. Not big things, not awards or accomplishments, small things. I was patient with my coworker. I made a healthy lunch. I showed up even though I didn't feel like it. And when a harsh thought comes up during the day, ask yourself one question. Would I say this to someone I love? If the answer is no, don't say it to yourself either. You deserve the same kindness you give to everyone else. Not fake positivity, not toxic optimism, just honest, gentle truth. Instead of, I'm so lazy, try, today was heavy, but I'm still here. Instead of, I always fail, try, I'm still learning, and that's okay. Instead of, I'm not enough, try, I'm doing my best with what I have right now. These aren't magic words. They won't fix everything overnight, but over time, they rewire the way your brain talks to you, and that rewiring changes everything. The perfection trap. So much of the inner critic's power comes from one toxic belief, that unless something is perfect, it's worthless. Perfectionism tells you that your value is tied to your performance, that love is conditional, that mistakes are unforgivable, that you have to earn the right to feel okay about yourself. But perfection isn't real. It never was. It's a moving target that you'll chase your entire life and never reach. And while you're chasing it, you miss everything beautiful about the messy, imperfect, gloriously human life you're actually living. Letting go of the inner critic means letting go of the idea that you need to be flawless to be worthy. It means embracing progress over perfection, growth over grades, effort over outcomes. Your mistakes don't make you broken. They make you brave. Because at least you tried. At least you showed up. And that's more than most people are willing to do. Your inner voice matters. I'll leave you with this thought before we move on. Your brain is always listening. It hears every single thing you say about yourself, and it believes you. If you spend years telling yourself you're not enough, your brain will organize your entire life around that belief. It will find evidence to support it everywhere. It will filter out the good and amplify the bad. But it works the other way too. If you start speaking to yourself with kindness, with patience, with compassion, your brain will start reorganizing. It will start noticing what's going right. It will start believing that maybe, just maybe, you're more capable than you've been giving yourself credit for. The art of letting go isn't about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming all the things that were never really you in the first place. The doubt, the criticism, the impossible standards, those were never yours. They were given to you, and you've been carrying them like they belong to you. They don't. So put them down. Change the conversation inside your mind and start talking to yourself like someone you actually love, because you are someone worth loving, exactly as you are, right now. Not when you lose the weight, not when you get the promotion, not when you finally have it all together, right now. Chapter 3. The Invisible Backpack. Unpacking Emotional Baggage. Have you ever had one of those days where everything annoys you? Someone cuts you off in traffic and you're furious for an hour. A friend cancels plans and suddenly you're convinced nobody actually cares about you. Your partner says something slightly insensitive and you snap like they just committed the ultimate betrayal. And then later, when you've calmed down, you think, why did I react like that? That was way too much. Here's why. Because it was never really about the traffic or the canceled plans or the comment. It was about something deeper, something older, something you've been carrying for a long time without even realizing it. Welcome to the world of emotional baggage. The pockets full of stones. I want you to imagine something. Every morning when you get dressed, you put on a jacket. And this jacket has deep pockets. Every time someone hurts you, disappoints you, betrays you, or makes you feel small, a stone gets dropped into one of those pockets. At first, you barely notice. 1 stone, 2 stones, no big deal. But years go by, and those pockets get heavy. Your shoulders start aching. Your steps get slower. Your energy fades. You can't figure out why you're so tired all the time because you've forgotten about the stones. They become part of you, part of your normal. But they're not normal. They're weight you were never meant to carry forever. That's emotional baggage, unresolved grief, buried shame, swallowed anger, heartbreak that never fully healed, guilt that whispers at 3 a.m., all those stones sitting in your pockets, making everything harder than it needs to be. Does that resonate with you? Can you feel the weight of some of those stones right now? Why we hold on. Here's the strange thing about emotional baggage. We don't hold on to it because we enjoy the pain. We hold on to it because we're scared of what happens if we let it go. Think about it. If you've been carrying anger toward someone for years, that anger has become familiar. It's become part of your identity. I'm the one who got hurt. I'm the one who was abandoned. I'm the one who can't trust people. And as painful as those identities are, they feel safe. They feel known. Letting them go means stepping into the unknown. It means asking, who am I without this pain? And that question can be terrifying. Some of us hold on because we think the pain protects us. If I stay angry, they can't hurt me again. If I keep my guard up, I won't be vulnerable. But that armor you built to keep the world out, it's also keeping everything good from getting in. Love, connection, joy, peace, they can't reach you through all that steel. Have you ever caught yourself pushing someone away because you were scared of being hurt again? Have you ever sabotaged something good because deep down you didn't believe you deserved it? That's the baggage talking, and it's time to start unpacking. Camille's story. Camille was in her early 30s when she realized she had a pattern. Every relationship she entered, she'd find a reason to leave before things got too serious. The first few months would be great. Connection, laughter, vulnerability. But the moment things started getting real, the moment someone got close enough to actually see her, something inside Camille would panic. She'd pick fights, find flaws, create distance. It took her years to trace it back to its source. When Camille was 17, her first serious boyfriend told her he loved her. 2 weeks later, he was with someone else. No explanation, no closure, just gone. That experience planted a belief deep in Camille's subconscious. People who say they love you will leave. And for over a decade, she lived by that belief without even knowing it. Every new relationship was filtered through that lens. Every kind gesture was met with suspicion. Every "I love you" triggered a quiet internal alarm. Camille didn't start healing by finding the perfect partner. She started healing by admitting to herself, I'm still carrying the pain of someone who hasn't been in my life for 15 years, and I'm letting that pain make decisions for me. That admission was everything, not because it magically erased the wound, but because it shone a light on it, and things lose their power when they're no longer hiding in the dark. Through journaling and honest conversations with a therapist, Camille began to separate the past from the present. She didn't forget what happened. She didn't pretend it didn't hurt. But she stopped letting it write the script for every relationship that came after. She told me once, I didn't erase the scar. I just stopped picking at it. Has something from your past ever shown up in your present? Have you ever reacted to someone today based on something someone else did to you years ago? If so, that's not a flaw. That's just a wound that still needs attention, and acknowledging it is the bravest thing you can do. Your emotions are messengers, not enemies. Here's something that shifted my entire perspective on emotional baggage. Your emotions are not punishments. They are messages. Grief is telling you that something mattered deeply. Anger is showing you where a boundary was crossed. Shame is pointing to a place that needs compassion. Fear is highlighting something that feels unresolved. These emotions aren't trying to torture you. They're trying to communicate with you. The problem is, most of us were never taught how to listen. We were taught to suppress. Don't cry. Get over it. Be strong. Move on. So we shoved the feelings down. We buried them under work, relationships, food, alcohol, social media, busyness. Anything to avoid sitting with the discomfort. But buried emotions don't die. They just go underground and start leaking out sideways. That's why you overreact to small things. That's why your body holds tension you can't explain. That's why you feel anxious for no reason. There's always a reason. You've just been trained not to look at it. The emotional inventory. I want to give you a practical tool, something you can do today that might be uncomfortable, but could also be the beginning of something powerful. Set aside 15 minutes, find a quiet space, and ask yourself these questions. What pain am I still carrying that I haven't fully processed? Whose words still echo in my head even though they're no longer in my life? What moment from my past still stings when I think about it? What did I never get to say that I needed to say? Write your answers down. Don't filter them. Don't judge them. Just let them flow. You might be surprised by what comes up. Things you thought you were over. People you thought you'd forgotten. Moments you thought had lost their sting. And if something does come up, if something makes your chest tighten or your eyes water, don't run from it. That's not weakness. That's your heart finally getting the chance to speak. You might even want to write a letter, not one you'll send, just one that lets you say everything you've held inside. You hurt me. I deserved better. I'm angry. I forgive you. I forgive myself. Write it. Feel it. And then let it go. Tear it up. Delete it. Whatever feels right. The act itself is the release. Release doesn't mean reconciliation. I want to make something very clear. Letting go of emotional baggage does not mean you have to reconcile with the person who hurt you. It doesn't mean you have to forgive them to their face. It doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life. Letting go is not about them. It's about you. It's about deciding that this person, this memory, this pain, no longer gets to live rent-free in your heart. It's about evicting the ghost so you can finally use that space for something better. Forgiveness, when it comes, is not saying what you did was okay. It's saying, I refuse to let what you did keep hurting me. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing you'll ever do. Empty your pockets. You've been carrying these stones for long enough. Some of them were placed there by people who didn't deserve access to your pockets. Some of them you picked up yourself because you thought you deserved a weight. You don't. You deserve to walk through life with your shoulders back and your head up and your pockets empty. You deserve to feel light again, to laugh without the heaviness underneath, to love without the fear of being hurt, controlling every move. So reach into those pockets. Feel the stones. Acknowledge them. Thank them for whatever lesson they carried, and then, one by one, set them down. You don't need them anymore. And as you walk forward, lighter, freer, more alive than you felt in years, you'll realize something beautiful. You didn't lose anything by letting go. You gained everything. That's the art of letting go. Chapter 4. Breaking the Loop. How to Stop Overthinking. Everything, be honest with me for a second. How many times have you replayed a conversation in your head today? Not once, not twice, but over and over again, rewinding and fast-forwarding, changing what you said, imagining what you should have said, picturing their face, analyzing their tone, and how many times has that replay actually changed anything? 0. Every single time, 0. But you keep doing it anyway, because your brain tells you that if you just think about it one more time, you'll crack the code, you'll find the answer, you'll feel better, except you never do. You just feel more stuck, more drained, more trapped inside your own head. Does that sound like you? Have you ever spent an entire evening mentally rehearsing a conversation that hadn't even happened yet? Practiced your lines, predicted their responses, prepared for every possible outcome, and then the actual conversation went nothing like you imagined? Yeah, that's the loop. And today, we're going to break it. The thief you didn't know you were hosting overthinking is a thief. But it's not the kind that breaks in through the window. It's the kind you invite through the front door because it shows up dressed as responsibility. It tells you it's keeping you safe. It tells you it's helping you prepare. It tells you that worrying is the same as caring, but it's not. Worrying is not preparation. Worrying is rehearsing for a disaster that usually never arrives. And while you're busy rehearsing, life is happening right in front of you and you're missing it. Overthinking steals your sleep. It steals your confidence. It steals your ability to enjoy a good moment. Because somewhere in the back of your mind, you're already worried about how it might end. Have you ever been in the middle of something genuinely wonderful? A great dinner, a beautiful sunset, a moment of real connection, and instead of being present, your brain whispered, "This won't last"? That's the thief at work, robbing you of the only thing that's real, this moment, right now. The myth of the perfect decision. One of the biggest fuel sources for overthinking is the belief that there's a perfect decision out there. And if you just think hard enough, you'll find it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. There is no perfect decision. There are only decisions. And then there are the things you do after you make them. Most of the time, it's not the decision that determines the outcome. It's what you do next. Two people can make the exact same choice, and one thrives while the other struggles, not because the choice was different, but because the follow-through was. So stop waiting for certainty. Certainty is a myth. Clarity doesn't come before action, it comes after. You don't see the full staircase before you take the first step. You just see the step in front of you, and that's enough. Have you ever put off a decision for weeks, maybe months, agonizing over it, only to finally make the choice and realize it took you 5 minutes of actual doing versus 5 months of unnecessary thinking? That gap between thinking and doing is where overthinking lives, and the only way to close that gap is to move. Rami's story. Rami had a dream. He wanted to open a small coffee shop. Not a franchise, not some trendy Instagram spot, just a warm, honest little place where people could sit and feel at home. He had the recipes. He had the vision. He even had some savings set aside. But every time he got close to starting, his brain would hijack the process. What if nobody comes? What if the location is wrong? What if I go bankrupt in 6 months? What if people laugh at me? So Rami did what overthinkers do best. He researched. He read every article about small business failure rates. He created spreadsheets and projections and contingency plans for contingency plans. He talked about his dream constantly, but never took a single real step toward it. One evening, his sister said something that cut right through all the noise. "Rami, you're not preparing, you're hiding. You're using research as an excuse not to start." And she was right. Rami wasn't overthinking because he wanted to be ready. He was overthinking because he was terrified of failing in front of people. The research wasn't bringing him closer to his dream. It was keeping him at a comfortable distance from it. So Rami made a deal with himself. He gave himself a deadline. By the end of this month, I will sign a lease. Not a perfect lease, not the ideal location, just a lease. And he did. The shop wasn't perfect. The first few months were rough. He made mistakes, but you know what? He also made coffee. Real coffee for real people in a real place. And that felt infinitely better than another year of hypothetical perfection inside his head. The last time I heard about Rami, his little shop had a small but loyal following, not because everything went according to plan, but because he finally stopped planning and started doing. Has that ever been you? Have you ever had a dream that you researched to death instead of actually pursuing? How to actually break the cycle. Let me give you some real tools, not vague advice, actual things you can do when the loop starts. First, set a decision deadline. Overthinking thrives in open space. When there's no deadline, your brain will happily spin forever. So create one. I will decide by tonight. I will send this email before lunch. I will give myself 24 hours, and then I'm going with my gut. The deadline isn't about rushing. It's about containing. It puts a fence around the thinking so it doesn't sprawl into every corner of your life. Second, limit your information intake. This one is counterintuitive, but hear me out. More information does not always lead to better decisions. After a certain point, more input just creates more confusion. It's called analysis paralysis. And it's real. Stop reading the 15th review. Stop asking the 7th friend for their opinion. Stop watching one more YouTube video about it. You already know enough. You've known enough for a while. You're just using information gathering as a socially acceptable form of procrastination. Third, take imperfect action. This is the big one. Do something before you're ready. Send the text before you've rewritten it 9 times. Apply for the job before you convince yourself you're qualified. Start the project before you have the perfect plan. Imperfect action will always beat perfect inaction. Always. Fourth, ground yourself when the spiral starts. When you feel your brain revving up, try this technique. Look around and name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This is called sensory grounding, and it works because it yanks your mind out of the hypothetical future and plants it firmly in the present. Your body is always in the now. It's your mind that time travels. So use your senses to bring it back. The cost of waiting. Here's something nobody talks about. While you're sitting in your head, running scenarios, weighing options, and waiting for the perfect moment, someone else out there is taking action. They're not smarter than you. They're not braver. They're not more talented. They're just willing to be imperfect. They're willing to look foolish. They're willing to start before they're ready. And that willingness, that raw, messy, courageous willingness, is what separates people who dream from people who do. You've already wasted enough time in the loop. You've already spent enough nights staring at the ceiling, arguing with yourself about things that might never happen. What if you just decided to trust yourself? Not trust that everything will go perfectly, but trust that you can handle whatever happens, because you can. You've handled everything so far, haven't you? Every curveball, every heartbreak, every failure, every disappointment. You're still here, still standing, still breathing, still fighting. That's not luck. That's resilience, and it's already inside you. A mantra for the overthinker. When the loop begins, when you feel your brain locking onto a thought and refusing to let go, say this to yourself. Not everything needs a perfect answer. I trust myself to handle whatever comes. Say it out loud if you can. Write it on a sticky note and put it on your mirror. Make it the wallpaper on your phone, whatever it takes to remind yourself that you are not defined by your decisions. You are defined by your willingness to keep showing up. Overthinking is a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So step off the chair, plant your feet on the ground, and walk forward even if the path isn't perfectly lit. You'll figure it out as you go. You always have. Chapter 5. When it's time to walk away, letting go of people. This one is going to be hard. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, because letting go of a thought pattern is one thing. Letting go of a habit is one thing. But letting go of a person, someone you loved, trusted, built memories with, shared pieces of yourself with, that's a whole different kind of pain. And yet, sometimes it's the most necessary thing you'll ever do. Have you ever stayed in a relationship, a friendship, a connection, long past its expiration date? Not because it was still good, but because it used to be? Because you kept hoping that the person you first met would come back? Have you ever held on to someone not because they made your life better, but because the idea of life without them felt too empty to face? If so, you're not weak. You're human. We are wired for connection. Letting go of people goes against every instinct we have. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is open your hands and let someone walk away. The truth about outgrowing people. Not everyone who starts the journey with you is meant to finish it with you. That's not a tragedy. That's just life. People come into your life for different reasons. Some come to teach you something. Some come to love you for a season. Some come to show you what you don't want. And some come to stay. But you don't always know which category someone falls into until the chapter is over. And that's okay. You're not supposed to know in advance. The hard part is when you realize that someone you thought was permanent is actually temporary. When the friendship that once felt like oxygen starts feeling like a weight. When the relationship that once lit you up starts dimming your light. Growth means change, and change sometimes means leaving people behind, not because you don't care about them, but because staying would mean abandoning yourself. Have you ever felt guilty for outgrowing someone, like you owed them your loyalty even though the relationship was costing you your peace? That guilt is a sign that you have a good heart, but a good heart still needs boundaries, and boundaries are not betrayal. They're self-respect. The dreams we built with them. Here's what makes letting go of people so uniquely painful. It's not just the person you're releasing. It's everything you imagined with them. The future you planned. The inside jokes. The traditions. The someday we'll conversations. When you let go of a person, you also let go of a version of the future that will never exist. And that grief is real. Don't let anyone minimize it. You're not just mourning a person, you're mourning a possibility, a life that almost was, and that deserves acknowledgement. But here's what I also want you to hear. The future you're releasing was built on a version of that person that no longer exists. You're grieving a ghost, and while that ghost was beautiful once, holding on to it is keeping you from seeing what's actually in front of you right now. Danny and Kira. Danny and Kira had been inseparable since college. Roommates, travel buddies, each other's emergency contacts. They were the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences and could communicate entire conversations with a single look. But somewhere around their late 20s, things shifted. Kira started making subtle digs, comments about Danny's career choices that felt less like concern and more like competition. Plans that Kira would cancel last minute without apology. Conversations that left Danny feeling drained instead of energized. Danny kept making excuses. She's stressed. She doesn't mean it. That's just how she is. But one night, after yet another interaction that left her feeling small, Danny asked herself a question that changed everything. If I met Kira today, for the first time, with no history between us, would I choose her as my friend? The answer was immediate and devastating. No. Danny didn't blow up the friendship with a dramatic confrontation. She didn't write a long message listing every grievance. She simply stopped forcing something that was no longer working. She stopped being the only one reaching out. She stopped rearranging her life to accommodate someone who couldn't be bothered to show up for her. And in the silence that followed, Danny found something unexpected. Relief. Not happiness. Not immediately. But relief. The relief of no longer pretending. The relief of no longer performing. The relief of choosing honesty over habit. Does that story remind you of anyone in your life? Someone you're holding on to out of history rather than harmony? Signs. It's time to let go. Sometimes we need it spelled out. So here it is. It might be time to let go when you feel emotionally exhausted after every interaction, when you're constantly censoring yourself to avoid conflict, when you're always the one initiating, always the one compromising, always the one apologizing, even when you didn't do anything wrong. It might be time to let go when you've communicated your needs clearly and repeatedly, and nothing has changed. When the relationship brings more anxiety than comfort. When you feel guilty for growing, for succeeding, for being happy. And here's the one that cuts deepest. It might be time to let go when you realize you're staying out of fear rather than love. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of hurting them, fear of what people will say. Fear is not a reason to stay. Love is. And if the love has become one-sided, conditional, or toxic, then what you're holding on to isn't love anymore. It's a pattern. And patterns can be broken. The goodbye letter. You may never get closure from the person you need to let go of. Most of us don't. Closure is a Hollywood invention. In real life, people leave without explaining. Friendships fade without a final conversation. Relationships end with loose threads and unanswered questions. So instead of waiting for closure that may never come, give it to yourself. Write a letter you'll never send. Start it however feels natural. Thank you for the good times. I'm angry about what happened. I wish things were different. I deserved better. Say everything you've been holding in, every word you swallowed, every feeling you suppressed. Let it all out onto the page. And then, when you're done, let the letter go too. Delete it. Tear it up. Burn it if that feels right. The act of writing it is the release. The act of destroying it is the declaration. This chapter is closed. Being alone versus being lonely. One of the biggest reasons people stay in relationships that hurt them is the fear of being alone. But I need you to hear this clearly. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. You can be surrounded by people and feel completely alone. You can be in a relationship and feel lonelier than you've ever felt. Loneliness isn't about how many people are around you. It's about how connected you feel to them. And sometimes the loneliest place in the world is next to someone who doesn't truly see you. When you let go of the wrong people, you create space. Space for rest, space for healing, space for the right people to find you. People who don't require you to shrink, people who celebrate your growth instead of being threatened by it, people who show up, not perfectly, but consistently. Those people exist. But they can't get to you if every seat at your table is taken by someone who doesn't deserve to be there. Honor the ending. Every ending is a doorway. It doesn't feel like it in the moment. In the moment, it just feels like loss. But on the other side of that door is a version of your life you can't even imagine yet. A version where you're lighter, freer, more yourself than you've been in years. Don't chase what's choosing to leave. Don't beg for the bare minimum. Don't dim your light so someone else feels comfortable in the dark. Let them go. And in doing so, let yourself go too. Into freedom, into peace, into the life you've been too afraid to claim. Because the right people don't ask you to be less. They inspire you to be more. And you deserve more. Chapter 6. The Chains You Don't See. Releasing Guilt and Shame. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. Is there something you did, maybe years ago, maybe last week, that you still punish yourself for? Something that sits in the back of your mind like a courtroom verdict you can never appeal? Maybe you hurt someone and never apologized. Maybe you walked away from something and still wonder if you made the right call. Maybe you made a choice that seemed right at the time, but looks terrible in the rearview mirror. And now, every time things get quiet, every time you're alone with your thoughts, that thing comes back, not as a memory, as an accusation. You should have done more. You should have known better. You don't deserve to be happy after what you did. That's guilt. And when guilt goes deep enough, when it moves from I did something bad to I am bad, that's shame. And shame is one of the heaviest things a human being can carry. Have you ever felt that? That sinking feeling that no matter how much good you do, it'll never be enough to make up for something in your past. If so, I need you to hear me clearly. You are not your worst moment. You are not the mistake you made at 22. You are not the words you said in anger. You are not the choice you made when you didn't have enough information to choose wisely. You are a human being who did the best they could with what they had at the time. And that's all any of us can do. The invisible prison guilt and shame operate like an invisible prison. You can't see the bars, but you feel them everywhere. They show up as the inability to fully enjoy a compliment, as the instinct to sabotage something good because you don't believe you deserve it, as the quiet belief that if people really knew you, the real you, they'd walk away. Shame is particularly cruel because it attacks your identity, not your actions. Guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am a mistake. And when you believe you are a mistake, everything you do gets filtered through that belief. You don't apply for the job because someone like you doesn't deserve it. You don't accept love because someone like you will only ruin it. You don't celebrate your wins because someone like you hasn't earned the right to feel proud. Does any of that sound familiar? Have you ever held yourself back from something wonderful because a voice inside whispered, you don't deserve this? That voice is shame, and it's a liar. Where it all started, here's the thing about guilt and shame. Most of the time, they didn't originate with you. They were planted. Maybe a parent said something in frustration that lodged itself in your chest and never left. Maybe a teacher made an example of you in front of the whole class. Maybe you made a mistake as a child, and instead of being taught that mistakes are normal, you were made to feel like something was fundamentally wrong with you. Children don't have the tools to process those moments. They can't say, that adult is projecting their frustration onto me. They just absorb it. They internalize it. And that internalized message becomes the soundtrack of their life. Something is wrong with me. I have to be perfect to be loved. If I mess up, I'll be abandoned. These beliefs follow you into adulthood. They sit behind your decisions, your relationships, your self-image, and the worst part is they feel so natural that you don't even question them. You just assume they're true. But they're not. They were never true. They were just heavy things that got placed on a small child's shoulders. And now that child is an adult who's still carrying weight that was never theirs. Noelle's story. Noelle ended a 3-year relationship because it wasn't working. She wasn't being treated poorly. There was no dramatic betrayal. It just wasn't right. The love had faded. The connection had become routine. And Noelle knew in her gut that staying would mean building a life on a foundation that had already cracked. So she left. But instead of feeling free, Noelle felt consumed by guilt, not because she'd done something terrible, but because she'd been raised to believe that leaving was always wrong, that good people stay, that love means endurance, no matter the cost. For 2 years after the breakup, Noelle replayed every moment. Did I try hard enough? Did I give up too soon? What if he was the one and I just couldn't see it? The guilt ate at her. It affected her sleep, her friendships, her ability to be present. She was free from the relationship, but imprisoned by the guilt of choosing herself. It wasn't until she sat down with a counselor that something shifted. The counselor said something simple but devastating. Noelle, guilt isn't always truth. Sometimes it's just conditioning. That sentence cracked something open. Noelle realized she wasn't feeling guilty because she'd done something wrong. She was feeling guilty because she'd done something her upbringing told her was wrong. There's a massive difference. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. Walking away from something that isn't right isn't betrayal. Sometimes the bravest, most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the other person is to tell the truth and let go. Noelle didn't become guilt-free overnight, but she started challenging the guilt every time it showed up. Is this real or is this conditioning? Did I truly do something harmful, or am I just scared of being seen as the bad guy? Slowly, the guilt loosened its grip, not because Noelle erased the past, but because she stopped letting someone else's definition of good determine how she felt about herself. Have you ever felt guilty for choosing yourself? Have you ever stayed in something longer than you should have because leaving felt like a sin? If so, I want you to sit with this question. Whose voice is that guilt really coming from? Is it yours? Or did someone hand it to you a long time ago? How to begin releasing guilt and shame. This isn't a one-step process. It's not something you fix with a single journal entry or a positive affirmation. But it does begin with small, intentional shifts. First, separate what you did from who you are. You made a choice. That choice may have been wrong, but a wrong choice does not make you a wrong person. Say it out loud if you need to. I feel guilty, but I am not guilty. There is a difference. Second, ask yourself honestly, is this mine to carry? Some of the guilt you're holding was placed on you by someone else, a manipulative partner who made you feel responsible for their emotions, a parent who guilted you into compliance, a culture that taught you that putting yourself first is selfish. Not all guilt is earned. Some of it is inherited, and inherited guilt is not your burden. Third, if you did hurt someone, make amends. Apologize, not excessively, not endlessly, but sincerely. Own your part. And then, this is the critical part, forgive yourself, not once, as many times as it takes. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a door you walk through again and again until one day you realize you're on the other side. Fourth, challenge the shame. When that voice says, I'm not enough, respond with truth. I'm human, I've made mistakes, and I am still worthy of love, peace, and a fresh start. That's not arrogance. That's honesty. And honesty is the antidote to shame. The release statement. Here's something I want you to try. Write this down in your own handwriting on a piece of paper. I forgive myself for holding on to guilt that no longer serves me. I release the belief that I must suffer in order to be a good person. I am allowed to heal. I am allowed to move forward. I am allowed to feel light. Read it out loud. let the words land, and then do whatever feels right with the paper. Keep it, tear it, burn it. The ritual matters less than the intention behind it. You are not here to spend your life paying for your past. You are here to learn from it, grow beyond it, and build something beautiful on the other side of it. A mantra for the healing heart. When guilt or shame rises, and it will because healing isn't linear, say this: I am allowed to grow beyond my past. I am not who I was. I am who I choose to become. You don't have to earn forgiveness. You don't have to prove you've suffered enough to deserve peace. Peace is your birthright. It always was. So lay down the weight, open your hands, and let the chains fall. You've carried them long enough. Chapter 7. Into the unknown, making peace with change. Let me ask you something. When was the last time something in your life changed and your first reaction wasn't fear? Probably hard to remember, right? Because for most of us, change doesn't feel like an opportunity. It feels like a threat. It feels like the ground shifting under your feet. It feels like losing your grip on the only reality you know. And yet, here's the paradox that nobody wants to hear. The only way to grow is through change. And the only thing standing between you and the life you actually want is the fear of leaving the life you already know. Have you ever stayed in a situation, a job, a city, a mindset, not because it made you happy, but because it was familiar? Because even though it wasn't great, at least you knew what to expect? That's the trap. Familiarity disguised as safety. Comfort disguised as contentment. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. Why change terrifies us? Your brain has one primary objective: keep you alive. And for thousands of years, that meant sticking with what was known. Unknown territory meant predators. New environments meant danger. The brain learned to associate unfamiliarity with risk, and that wiring is still active today. The problem is, in the modern world, most of the things we're afraid of aren't physically dangerous. They're emotionally uncomfortable. Starting a new career, ending a relationship, moving to a new city, saying something honest that might change everything. None of these will kill you, but your brain responds to them as if they might. Heart racing, palms sweating, that tight knot in your stomach. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between a lion in the grass and a difficult conversation with your boss. It fires the same alarm either way. So when you feel terrified of making a change, know that it's not weakness. It's biology. Your brain is doing its job. But your job is to override the alarm when you know deep down that the change is necessary. Have you ever known in your gut that something needed to change, but the fear kept you frozen? Have you ever looked back at a change you were terrified of and realized it was the best thing that ever happened to you? That's the pattern. Fear before, growth after, every single time. Marcus's story. Marcus had been an accountant for 11 years. He was good at it, reliable, respected. His paycheck was consistent, his routine was predictable, and his life looked exactly like it did 5 years ago. And that was the problem. Marcus had wanted to be a teacher since he was a teenager. He loved explaining things, loved watching someone's face light up when a concept finally clicked. But somewhere along the way, he'd been talked out of it. Teaching doesn't pay well. You're too smart for that. Be practical. So Marcus was practical for 11 years. But every Sunday night, as he prepared for another Monday at the firm, Something in his chest would tighten. Not anxiety exactly, more like grief. A quiet mourning for a life he was choosing not to live. One evening, Marcus wrote 2 lists. One was titled, "What I'll Lose If I Make the Change." The other was titled, "What I'll Lose If I Don't." The first list had things like financial security, predictability, professional reputation, real concerns, legitimate fears. The second list had one line: the chance to spend my life doing something that actually matters to me. And that one line outweighed everything on the first list. Marcus didn't quit the next day. He wasn't reckless about it. He started taking education courses on weekends. He volunteered as a tutor. He saved money. He built a bridge between where he was and where he wanted to be. And 1.5 years later, Marcus walked into a high school classroom as a full-time math teacher. The pay was lower, the hours were longer, the work was harder in ways he hadn't expected. But for the first time in over a decade, Sunday nights didn't hurt anymore. Has that ever been you? Have you ever been stuck between the life you're living and the life you know you're meant for? That space between safety and purpose, it's one of the most painful places a person can exist. And the only way out is through. Redefining change. What if change isn't the enemy? What if it's the invitation? We treat change like something that happens to us, something we endure, something we survive. But what if we started treating it like something we participate in, something we choose, something we welcome? Instead of asking, "What if this goes wrong?" Try asking, "What if this goes right? What could be waiting for me on the other side?" Instead of focusing on what you're leaving behind, focus on what you're walking toward. Yes, the path is unclear. Yes, the outcome is uncertain. But isn't that also kind of exciting? Think about the best things that have ever happened to you. The friendships, the adventures, the breakthroughs. How many of those came from staying exactly where you were? And how many came from taking a step into the unknown? Growth lives outside the comfort zone. It always has. And while the comfort zone feels safe, it's also where dreams go to collect dust. Small steps, big shifts. Here's the good news. Change doesn't have to be a dramatic overnight transformation. You don't have to blow up your life to rebuild it. Start small. Take one step that feels slightly uncomfortable. Have one conversation you've been avoiding. Try one thing you've been curious about. Apply for one opportunity that scares you just enough to make your heartbeat quicken. Each small step rewires your brain. It teaches your nervous system that unfamiliar doesn't mean unsafe. It builds evidence that you can handle more than you thought. And over time, those small steps become a path that leads somewhere you couldn't have imagined from where you started. You don't need to see the whole road. You just need to see the next step. And then take it. Trust the unfolding. I know this is easier said than done. Trusting the process when you can't see where it's going feels like walking blindfolded across a bridge you're not sure exists. But think about it. Has life ever taken you somewhere unexpected that turned out to be exactly where you needed to be? A wrong turn that led to the right destination? A closed door that forced you through a better one? Life has a way of rearranging itself when you stop trying to control every piece. Not because the universe has a master plan, but because when you let go of rigidity, you become adaptable. And adaptable people find their way, even in the dark. Trust doesn't mean certainty. It means willingness. Willingness to not have all the answers. willingness to be uncomfortable, willingness to believe that you are resilient enough to handle whatever comes next, because you are. You've proven that already, more times than you probably give yourself credit for. A mantra for the uncertain. When the fear of change grips you, when every instinct screams at you to stay where you are, say this: I am capable of navigating the unknown. Every step forward is progress, even the ones that feel shaky. I don't need to see the whole path. I just need to trust the next step. Change is not something to survive. It's something to embrace. Because on the other side of every change you've ever feared was a version of you that was stronger, wiser, and more alive than the version that was afraid. So stop standing at the edge. Stop calculating the distance. Stop rehearsing the fall. Just step. The ground will meet you. It always does. Chapter 8. Right here, right now. The power of living in the present. I want you to try something before you read another word. Stop. Just for a moment. Not dramatically. Not with candles and meditation music. Just pause wherever you are right now and notice 3 things. What do you hear? Maybe it's the hum of a fan, traffic outside, someone talking in the next room, or maybe just the sound of your own breathing. What do you feel? The weight of your body in your chair, the temperature of the air on your skin, the texture of whatever your hands are resting on. What do you see? Not the big picture, the small details, the way light falls across the room, a color you hadn't noticed before, the way shadows move when something shifts. For those few seconds, something happened. Your brain stopped time traveling. It stopped rewinding to yesterday and fast-forwarding to tomorrow. For just a breath or two, you were completely, entirely here. That's the present moment. And it's the only place where life actually happens. So why do we spend so little time there? The time machine in your head. Here's the truth about how most of us live. We're almost never in the present. Our bodies are here, but our minds are somewhere else entirely. We're replaying last Tuesday's argument. We're rehearsing Friday's meeting. We're worrying about next month's bills. We're regretting something we said 3 years ago. We're planning something that might happen 6 months from now. We are essentially living inside a mental time machine that takes us everywhere except where we actually are. And it's exhausting. Have you ever noticed that? The fatigue that comes not from what you're doing, but from what you're thinking about while you're doing it. You're eating dinner, but you're not tasting it because you're replaying a conversation from work. You're walking through a beautiful park, but you're not seeing it because you're running financial calculations in your head. You're sitting with someone you love, but you're not really with them because your mind is somewhere in next week. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever been physically present but mentally 1,000 miles away, and then later you realize you missed the moment entirely, and you can never get it back? That's what living outside the present costs you. Not money, not time. Something more valuable, the actual experience of your own life. Why the present feels so uncomfortable. So if the present moment is so important, why do we avoid it? Because the present moment is honest, and honesty isn't always comfortable. When you're fully present, you can't hide behind distractions. You can't numb yourself with busyness. You can't avoid the feelings you've been running from. The present moment strips away all the noise and leaves you face to face with reality, with yourself. And for a lot of people, that's terrifying. Because in the present, you might have to admit that you're unhappy. You might have to feel the grief you've been postponing. You might have to acknowledge that something in your life needs to change. You might have to sit with discomfort without reaching for your phone, without scrolling, without checking the next notification. The past and the future are comfortable in a strange way. The past is already written, so you can analyze it without risk. The future is imaginary, so you can control it in your head. But the present? The present is raw. It's unscripted. It demands that you show up as you actually are, not as you were or as you hope to be. That takes courage, real courage, the quiet kind that nobody gives you credit for. Elise's story. Elise was what most people would call successful. Great career in finance, nice apartment, active social life. From the outside, she had everything figured out. From the inside, she was drowning. The problem wasn't her circumstances. The problem was that Elise was never actually in her circumstances. Her body went through the motions while her mind lived permanently in the future. What if the market crashes? What if I lose my clients? What should I be doing right now to prepare for 5 years from now? What if I make the wrong investment? What if everything I've built falls apart? The anxiety was constant, not dramatic, not the kind that makes you collapse, the low-grade buzzing kind, the kind that sits in your chest like background static, always there, never quite loud enough to address, but never quiet enough to ignore. Elise couldn't enjoy anything. A vacation felt like wasted time. A dinner with friends felt like a distraction from something more important. Even sleep felt unproductive. She once told a friend, "I feel like I'm always preparing for life but never actually living it." That sentence haunted her long enough that she finally decided to do something about it. Elise started with 5 minutes of mindfulness each morning. Nothing fancy, no apps, no guided meditation, no special cushion. She just sat in her kitchen with her coffee and paid attention. The warmth of the mug in her hands, the steam rising and disappearing, the way the coffee tasted, actually tasted, when she wasn't rushing through it while scanning emails. At first, it felt pointless. Her brain screamed at her to check her phone, to make a list, to do something productive. 5 minutes of sitting still felt like an eternity. But she kept going, and after a few weeks, something subtle started to shift. Elise noticed things she'd been missing. The sound of birds outside her window that had always been there but she'd never heard. The way her neighbor's kid laughed on the way to school every morning. The feeling of sunlight on her face during her walk to work. These weren't revolutionary discoveries. They were ordinary moments. But that's exactly the point. She'd been so busy chasing extraordinary that she'd missed the beauty in the ordinary. And as it turns out, the ordinary is where most of life happens. Elise didn't quit her job or move to a monastery. She still worked hard. She still planned ahead. But she stopped living exclusively in the future. She started giving the present moment its fair share of her attention. And something unexpected happened. The anxiety didn't disappear, but it got quieter. Because when you're fully present, there's nothing to be anxious about. Anxiety needs the future to survive. Take away the future, bring yourself back to right now, and anxiety loses its stage. Has that ever happened to you? A moment where you were so completely present that everything felt okay? even if just for a few seconds? That feeling is always available to you. It's not something you have to earn or achieve. It's something you return to again and again and again. How to come home to the present. Let me give you some tools, simple ones, things you can do today, right now, without buying anything or signing up for anything. First, anchor yourself with breath. Your breath is always happening in the present tense. It's the one thing you do that is permanently anchored to right now. So when your mind starts drifting, when you feel yourself getting pulled into yesterday or tomorrow, come back to your breath. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Breathe out for 6 counts. Do this 3 times. That's it. 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds, you've pulled yourself out of the time machine and planted your feet back on solid ground. Second, engage your senses. Your senses are present moment detectors. They only work in real time. You can't smell the future. You can't touch the past. So when you feel yourself spiraling, use your senses as anchors. What do you see right now? Really look. What do you hear? Listen beyond the obvious sounds. What do you feel against your skin? What can you smell in the air? This isn't meditation. It's just paying attention. And paying attention is the simplest, most powerful form of being present. Third, practice gratitude in real time. Not at night in a journal, although that's great too, but in the moment. When something good is happening, pause and acknowledge it. This coffee is really good. This conversation is making me feel connected. The sun feels amazing right now. These aren't groundbreaking observations, but they're acts of presence. They're your brain saying, I'm here, I notice this, and it's enough. Fourth, let go of the need to control what hasn't happened yet. This is the hardest one, because we believe that if we stop thinking about the future, we'll be unprepared for it. But that's the overthinking lie again, dressed in a different outfit. You can plan without obsessing. You can prepare without panicking. You can have goals without being consumed by them. The future will come whether you worry about it or not. The only question is whether you'll miss the present while waiting for it. A mantra for the present. When you catch yourself time traveling, when your mind is everywhere except where your body is, say this. This moment is all I have. I am here now, and this moment is enough. Not tomorrow, not next year, not when you've achieved something or fixed something or become something. Right now, this breath, this heartbeat, this exact second of your one precious life. That's where peace lives, not in the resolution of all your problems, not in the achievement of all your goals, but here, in the quiet, ordinary, extraordinary present. You don't have to chase peace. You just have to stop running from where you already are. Chapter 9. The Crack, Where the Light Gets In. Embracing Imperfection. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You finish a project, and instead of feeling proud, you immediately zoom in on the one thing that isn't quite right. You look at someone else's work, their career, their relationship, their life, and a small voice whispers, "Why can't I be like that?" You achieve something you've been working toward for months, and the satisfaction lasts about 12 seconds before your brain says, "Okay, but what's next?" That's perfectionism, and it's not the motivational superpower the world pretends it is. It's a cage. A beautifully decorated, socially acceptable cage that keeps you running on a treadmill of never enough. Have you ever felt that? That hollow feeling after an accomplishment where instead of joy, there's just pressure? Pressure to do more, be more, achieve more? If so, welcome to the club. It's a big club, and the membership fee is your peace of mind. The lie of flawlessness, somewhere along the way, most of us picked up a belief that goes something like this. If I can just be perfect, everything will be okay. People will love me. I'll feel secure. I'll finally be enough. But perfection isn't a destination. It's a mirage. The closer you get, the further it moves. You hit one standard and immediately raise it. You achieve one goal and instantly set a harder one. Not because you're ambitious, but because nothing ever feels like it's truly enough. And here's the cruelest part. Perfectionism doesn't just steal your satisfaction. It steals your willingness to try. Because if everything has to be perfect, then the risk of failure becomes unbearable. And if failure is unbearable, you stop taking risks. And if you stop taking risks, you stop growing. So perfectionism, the thing you thought was pushing you forward, is actually keeping you stuck. It's not the engine, it's the emergency brake. Does that hit close to home? Have you ever not started something because you were afraid it wouldn't be good enough? Have you ever killed an idea before it had a chance to breathe because your standards suffocated it in the crib? That's not high standards. That's fear wearing a mask. Where perfectionism really comes from. Perfectionism rarely starts as a personal choice. It usually starts as a survival strategy. Maybe you grew up in a home where love felt conditional, where approval had to be earned through performance, where mistakes were met with disappointment instead of understanding. So you learned, early and deeply, that the only way to be safe was to be flawless. Or maybe it started at school, where your worth was measured by grades and rankings, where being average felt like failure, where the message, spoken or unspoken, was that your value as a person was directly tied to your output. Or maybe it started with comparison. Social media showing you curated highlight reels of other people's lives, making your behind the scenes feel inadequate by comparison. Every scroll confirming the lie that everyone else has figured it out and you're the only one still struggling. Whatever the origin, the result is the same. A belief that you're not allowed to be human, not allowed to stumble, not allowed to be messy, confused, or in progress. And that belief will drain every ounce of joy from your life if you let it. Jordan's story. Jordan was the person everyone admired. Top of the class in school, first to get promoted at work, the kind of person who made everything look effortless. People would say, "I wish I had your drive." And Jordan would smile and nod while silently thinking, "You have no idea how exhausting this is." Because behind the achievements was a person who couldn't rest, couldn't celebrate, couldn't look at anything they'd done without immediately seeing what was wrong with it. Jordan once spent an entire weekend redesigning a presentation that their manager had already approved. Not because there was anything wrong with it, but because Jordan had found a font that didn't feel right. 12 hours of work over a font. It sounds absurd from the outside, but if you've been there, you know it's not about the font. It's about the feeling that nothing is ever good enough, that you're always one mistake away from being exposed as a fraud. One day, Jordan's mentor said something that cracked the armor. "Jordan, perfection doesn't exist, and even if it did, It wouldn't be what makes people trust you. What makes people trust you is that you're real. Jordan sat with that for weeks. Real, not polished, not flawless, real. Slowly, Jordan started experimenting with imperfection, sending emails without rereading them 5 times, sharing ideas in meetings before they were fully formed, saying, "I don't know," instead of pretending to have all the answers. And here's what happened. Nobody thought less of Jordan. In fact, people started connecting with Jordan more, because perfection is impressive but distant. Imperfection is human and warm. People don't bond with your achievements. They bond with your honesty. Have you ever been afraid to let people see the real you? The messy, uncertain, still figuring it out version? What if that version is actually the one people are most drawn to? The freedom on the other side. Letting go of perfectionism isn't about lowering your standards. It's about changing what you measure. Instead of measuring your worth by your output, measure it by your willingness to show up. Instead of grading yourself on results, grade yourself on effort. Instead of asking, "Was this perfect?" ask, "Was this honest?" Here are some shifts that can change everything. Accept your flaws as features, not bugs. The things you're most insecure about are often the things that make you most relatable. Your awkwardness, your sensitivity, your overthinking, these aren't defects. They're textures. They're what make you a full, complex, interesting human being rather than a polished but hollow performance. Stop comparing your Chapter 3 to someone else's Chapter 20. You don't know their backstory. You don't know their struggles. You don't know what they sacrificed or lost or cried about on the way to where they are now. Their journey is theirs. Yours is yours. And comparing them is like comparing a sunrise to a symphony. They're both beautiful, but in completely different ways. Give yourself permission to fail, not just intellectually, actually feel it. Say it out loud. I am allowed to mess this up, and if I do, I'll learn something, and that's enough. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the tuition you pay for success. Every person you admire has a graveyard of failed attempts behind them. The difference isn't that they never failed. It's that they didn't let failure become their identity. Celebrate the small things. You got out of bed on a hard day. You had a difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. You tried something new, even though you were scared. Those aren't small things. Those are acts of courage, and they deserve recognition, especially from you. The beauty of being unfinished. Here's a thought I want to leave you with. You are not a finished product. You were never supposed to be. You are a work in progress, and that's not a flaw. That's the whole point. A painting isn't beautiful because it's finished. It's beautiful because of the brush strokes, the layers, the colors that were added and removed and blended over time. Some of the most stunning art in the world was never completed, and that's what makes it breathtaking. You're the same way. Your imperfections aren't something to hide. They're something to honor. They're proof that you've lived, that you've tried, that you've been brave enough to be imperfect in a world that constantly demands perfection. Have you ever looked at someone who was completely unapologetically themselves, flaws and all, and thought, "I wish I could be that free"? You can. The freedom isn't in becoming someone different. It's in accepting who you already are, not the version you perform for the world, the real version, the one with the messy hair and the half-finished plans and the imperfect but wildly beating heart. That version of you is not only enough, that version of you is extraordinary. A mantra for the recovering perfectionist. When the perfectionism creeps in, when that familiar pressure starts building, when you catch yourself editing and refining and second-guessing something that was already good enough, say this: I am enough just as I am. My imperfections make me whole. I release the need for perfection and embrace progress. Progress over perfection. Effort over outcome. Honesty over performance. That's not giving up. That's growing up. That's letting go of the exhausting performance of being flawless and stepping into the liberating truth of being human. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You never did. So put down the measuring stick. Step off the treadmill. Look at yourself, not through the lens of what you should be, but through the lens of what you already are. And what you already are is more than enough. Perfectly imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Chapter 10. Unchain Yourself. The Real Power of Forgiveness. I need to tell you something about forgiveness that might challenge everything you believe about it. Forgiveness is not for them. It was never for them. I know. That sounds wrong. It sounds like something a self-help poster would say. But stay with me for a minute, because this might be the most important thing we talk about. Think about someone who hurt you, really hurt you, not a small slight or a minor disagreement. The deep kind. The kind that changed how you see the world. The betrayal that taught you not to trust. The abandonment that taught you not to get too close. The cruelty that taught you to keep your walls up. Now let me ask you this. How much space does that person still occupy in your mind? How many nights have they stolen from you? How many moments have they ruined without even being in the room? How many new relationships have they contaminated with their shadow? Here's the brutal truth. While you're holding on to the anger, replaying the hurt, fantasizing about the apology you'll never receive, they're probably not thinking about you at all. They've moved on. They're eating dinner. They're watching television. They're sleeping just fine. And you're the one still carrying the weight. Does that feel unfair? It is. It absolutely is. What happened to you was unfair. But holding on to it isn't justice. It's self-punishment. And you've punished yourself long enough. What forgiveness is not. Let me clear something up before we go any further, because I think this is where most people get stuck. Forgiveness does not mean what they did was okay. It was not okay. You don't have to pretend it was. Forgiveness does not mean you have to let them back into your life. You don't. Some people have lost the privilege of access to you, and that boundary is healthy and necessary. Forgiveness does not mean you have to forget. You won't forget. Your brain stores painful memories for a reason. That's not a flaw. That's protection. Forgiveness is none of those things. Forgiveness is a decision to stop letting someone who hurt you in the past continue hurting you in the present. It's taking back the keys to your own peace. It's saying, you don't get to live in my head rent-free anymore. I'm reclaiming that space for something better. That's not weakness. That's the most powerful thing you can do. Tessa's story. Tessa trusted her closest friend with something deeply personal, a secret she'd never told anyone. Within a week, that secret was being whispered behind her back. The betrayal wasn't just about gossip. It was about safety. Tessa had let someone into the most guarded room in her heart, and that person had left the door wide open for the world to walk through. For 3 years, Tessa carried that anger. It burned. She rehearsed speeches she'd never give. She imagined confrontations that never happened. She built an entire identity around being the one who was betrayed, and during those 3 years, the person who had betrayed her sent a casual happy birthday text, liked her posts on social media, and seemingly had no idea the damage they'd caused. Tessa was drowning in fury while the other person was floating through life completely unbothered. One day, Tessa's aunt said something that hit differently than she expected. "Sweetheart, resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick." Tessa didn't forgive that day, or the next. Forgiveness wasn't a switch she flipped. It was a process she stumbled through. Some days she felt lighter. Other days the anger came roaring back like it had never left. But she kept choosing. Every day she chose to put the weight down, even when her hands instinctively reached to pick it back up. She wrote letters she never sent. She cried in ways she hadn't allowed herself to cry. She mourned a friendship that was, and she accepted the reality of what it had become. And eventually, something shifted. Not dramatically, quietly. The way dawn arrives. You don't notice the exact moment it happens, but suddenly the darkness is gone and there's light. Tessa didn't reconcile with the person. She didn't need to. The forgiveness wasn't about repairing the relationship. It was about repairing herself. Has someone ever hurt you so deeply that the anger became part of your identity? Have you ever realized that you were holding on to resentment not because it was helping you, but because it was the only thing that felt familiar? If so, you already know the cost. The question is whether you're ready to stop paying it. The healing power of letting go. Forgiveness heals the forgiver more than the forgiven. That's not poetic language. It's physiological reality. Studies have shown that chronic resentment elevates stress hormones, increases inflammation, disrupts sleep, and weakens the immune system. Your body literally suffers when your mind refuses to let go. The anger you're holding isn't just emotional weight, it's physical weight. Your shoulders carry it. Your jaw clenches around it. Your stomach churns with it. When you forgive, you're not just freeing your mind, you're freeing your body. And here's the part that surprises most people. Forgiveness doesn't require the other person's participation. You don't need their apology. You don't need them to admit what they did. You don't need them to understand your pain. Forgiveness is a solo act. It happens inside you, regardless of what happens outside. You can forgive someone who never said sorry. You can forgive someone who doesn't think they did anything wrong. You can forgive someone who isn't even alive anymore, because forgiveness was never about them. It was always about you, your peace, your freedom, your right to move forward without dragging the weight of someone else's actions behind you. A mantra for forgiveness. When the resentment surfaces, when the old hurt tries to pull you back under, say this: I release the past and choose peace. I forgive not because they deserve it, but because I deserve to be free. You do deserve to be free. You deserve to laugh without bitterness underneath, to love without walls built from old wounds, to wake up without the heaviness of someone else's choices presses down on your chest. So forgive, not for them, for you, and watch how light you become when you finally set down what was never yours to carry. Chapter 11. open hands, letting go of the need to control. Quick question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how tightly are you gripping your life right now? Are you the person who plans every detail of the day and panics when something goes off script? Do you check your email 17 times before noon just to make sure nothing has gone wrong? Do you lie awake at night running through tomorrow's schedule, adjusting variables in your head like a chess player preparing for a match against an invisible opponent? If you're nodding, I get it. Control feels safe. It feels responsible. It feels like the only thing standing between you and total chaos. But here's what nobody tells you about control. The tighter you grip, the more exhausted you get. And the more exhausted you get, the less control you actually have. It's a paradox that eats you alive if you let it. Have you ever tried holding a fistful of sand? The tighter you squeeze, the more slips through your fingers. But if you open your hand, hold it loosely, the sand stays. Life works the same way. The more you try to control it, the more it slips away. The more you let it flow, the more it stays. Why we cling control is a response to fear. Specifically, the fear that if we don't manage every detail, something terrible will happen. We'll be blindsided. We'll be hurt. We'll fail. We'll lose. And underneath all of that is the deepest fear of all, that we're not strong enough to handle what life throws at us. So we plan, we prepare, we micromanage, we try to force outcomes, we create backup plans for our backup plans, and we call it being responsible, when really it's just being afraid. Have you ever noticed that the times you feel most anxious are the times you feel least in control? That tight, panicky feeling in your chest. That isn't actually about the situation. It's about the gap between what's happening and what you think should be happening. That gap is where suffering lives, not in reality, but in the distance between reality and your expectations. Hannah's story. Hannah ran her life like a military operation. Morning routines timed to the minute, work tasks color-coded and prioritized. Social events planned weeks in advance with multiple contingency options. Even her relaxation time was scheduled. From the outside, she looked like she had it all together. From the inside, she was exhausted, because managing that level of control over everything is a full-time job on top of your actual full-time job. The cracks started showing when things didn't go according to plan. A meeting getting rescheduled would throw off her entire day. A friend showing up 15 minutes late would trigger a wave of irritation that felt disproportionate even to Hannah. A rainy day ruining an outdoor plan felt like a personal attack from the universe. Hannah wasn't controlling her life. Her need for control was controlling her. The turning point came during a vacation she'd planned down to every restaurant reservation and museum ticket. On the second day, a transportation strike shut down the trains. All of Hannah's carefully organized plans collapsed. At first, she spiraled. She sat in her hotel room frantically searching for alternatives, calling car services, trying to reconstruct the day from scratch. And then her travel companion said something quietly. "Hannah, what if we just see what happens?" 6 words that felt like someone had pulled the emergency brake on a speeding train. What if we just see what happens? Reluctantly, Hannah agreed. They walked out of the hotel with no plan. They wandered through streets they hadn't researched. They found a tiny restaurant that wasn't in any guidebook. They sat by a fountain for an hour and watched people. They got lost. They found their way back. They laughed more that day than they had in months. It was the best day of the entire trip, and none of it was planned. That evening, Hannah sat on the hotel balcony and cried, not from sadness, from relief. She realized she'd been spending so much energy trying to control life that she'd forgotten how to experience it. She'd been so busy driving that she'd never looked out the window. Does that resonate with you? Have you ever been so focused on managing everything that you forgot to enjoy anything? What you can actually control. Here's the liberating truth. You cannot control other people. You cannot control the weather, the economy, traffic, or what someone thinks of you. You cannot control whether you get the job, whether they text back, or whether life goes according to plan. What you can control is this, your response. That's it. That's the whole list. Your attitude, your effort, your perspective, your boundaries, your kindness, your honesty, how you treat people, how you treat yourself. Everything else? Open your hands and let it flow. This doesn't mean you stop planning. It doesn't mean you become passive or careless. It means you hold your plans loosely. You set intentions instead of demands. You prepare without attaching your peace to the outcome. It means saying, I'll do my best, and then I'll trust the rest. Learning to flow. Imagine standing by a river. The water moves effortlessly around rocks, over branches, through narrow passages. It doesn't fight the obstacles. It flows around them. It doesn't demand that the landscape change to suit its path. It adapts. That's how life works when you let go of control. You stop fighting the current. You stop exhausting yourself trying to rearrange the rocks. You start moving with the water instead of against it, and you discover something surprising. The river knows where it's going, even when you don't. Trust the flow. Trust the turns. Trust the detours. Some of the best moments of your life will be the ones you never planned. Say this when the grip tightens. I am not in control of everything, and that's okay. I trust that life is unfolding as it should. I choose to flow with it. Open your hands. Let the sand settle. Let the water carry you. You were never meant to hold it all. You were meant to live through it. Chapter 12. Feel the fear and move. Anyway, embracing courage. Can I be honest with you about something? Courage is not what you think it is. It's not the absence of fear. It's not some superhuman quality that only brave people possess. It's not jumping out of planes or giving speeches to thousands or walking through fire without flinching. Courage is being terrified and doing it anyway. It's your hands shaking while you hit send on that email. It's your voice cracking while you say what needs to be said. It's your heart pounding while you take the step you've been avoiding for months. Courage is not the lion's roar. It's the quiet whisper at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. Have you ever done something that scared you, something small, something nobody else would even call brave, but you knew what it cost you internally? That was courage. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The fear that keeps you. Small fear isn't your enemy. It's your alarm system. It exists to protect you, and sometimes it does its job well. The fear that stops you from touching a hot stove is useful. The fear that tells you to look both ways before crossing the street is helpful. But the fear that stops you from applying for the job, the fear that keeps you in a relationship that's slowly suffocating you, the fear that prevents you from sharing your art, your ideas, your truth, That fear isn't protecting you. It's imprisoning you. And the cruelest trick fear plays is making you think you're keeping yourself safe when really you're keeping yourself small. Have you ever looked back at something you were terrified of and realized it wasn't nearly as bad as you imagined? That the anticipation was worse than the reality? That the scenario you spent weeks dreading lasted 10 minutes and then it was over? That's fear's dirty secret. It inflates everything. It takes a possible discomfort and turns it into an imagined catastrophe. And then you organize your entire life around avoiding that catastrophe, which means you organize your entire life around fear. What kind of life is that? Owen's story. Owen was afraid of one thing more than anything else: being seen. Not in the literal sense. People saw him every day. He showed up to work, went to gatherings, functioned perfectly well in social settings. But the real Owen, the one with opinions and dreams and vulnerabilities and a slightly weird sense of humor, that Owen stayed hidden. Because at some point, young Owen had learned that being visible meant being vulnerable, and being vulnerable meant getting hurt. So adult Owen played it safe. He never shared his ideas unless he was absolutely certain they'd be well received. He never expressed his feelings in relationships until the other person went first. He never took creative risks because creative risks meant the possibility of failure, and failure meant exposure. Owen's life was fine, comfortable, predictable, and quietly suffocating. The shift came unexpectedly. Owen's company held an internal pitch competition, and his manager volunteered Owen's name without asking. Owen was furious at first, then terrified. Then, somewhere under the fury and the terror, something else stirred. Curiosity. What if I could actually do this? Owen spent 2 weeks preparing, not just the presentation, but himself. He practiced in the mirror. He recorded himself and watched it back, cringing at every pause and every awkward gesture. He almost backed out 3 times. On the day of the pitch, Owen's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the clicker. His voice cracked on the first sentence. He forgot a line in the middle and had to improvise. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect. But he did it. He stood in front of a room full of people and let them see him, the real him, the imperfect, nervous, slightly awkward, surprisingly funny him. He didn't win the competition. Someone else's idea was better, and Owen was genuinely happy for them. But something inside Owen shifted that day. A door opened that had been locked for decades, and on the other side of that door was a simple, world-changing realization. The fear didn't kill him. The vulnerability didn't destroy him. Being seen didn't end him. It freed him. Have you been hiding? Not from the world, but from yourself? Have you been playing a smaller version of you because the full version feels too risky? What if the risk is worth it? What if the thing you're most afraid of is also the thing that will set you free? How to move through fear. You don't eliminate fear. You don't wait for it to pass. You move through it. Here's how. Identify what you're actually afraid of. Most fear is vague. It's a cloud of dread rather than a specific threat. When you name it, you shrink it. I'm afraid of being rejected. I'm afraid of looking foolish. I'm afraid of failing publicly. Once it has a name, it has edges. And things with edges are smaller than shadows without shape. Take the smallest possible step. You don't have to conquer the whole mountain today. You just have to take one step uphill, one email, one conversation, one application, one honest sentence. Tiny acts of bravery repeated consistently build a courage muscle that gets stronger every time you use it. Reframe fear as a signal. What if fear isn't telling you to stop? What if it's telling you that you're about to do something that matters? The things that scare us most are often the things that mean the most. Fear and importance share the same address, except that failure is part of the deal. You will fail, not might, will. And that's not a prediction of doom. It's a promise of humanity. Every person who ever did anything meaningful failed along the way. The failures are not detours. They're part of the route. A mantra for the afraid. When fear rises, when your body tightens and your mind screams, "Don't!" Say this: "I feel afraid, and that's okay." Fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal that I'm growing. I choose to move forward anyway. You were not built to live in a cage of your own making. You were built to stretch, to reach, to stumble, to get back up, and to keep going. The bravest people aren't fearless. They're the ones who feel the fear all the way down to their bones and take the step anyway. So take the step. You're ready, even if you don't feel like it. Especially if you don't feel like it. Because the life you want is on the other side of the fear you feel. And it's waiting for you. Chapter 13. Drop the mask. Letting go of the need for approval. Be honest with me. How many decisions have you made today based on what someone else might think? Not big decisions, small ones. What you wore, how you worded that message, whether you posted that photo or deleted it, whether you laughed at a joke you didn't find funny, whether you agreed with an opinion you didn't actually share. We do this constantly, so constantly that most of us don't even notice it anymore. It's become automatic, a background program running in our minds 24 hours a day, scanning every room, every conversation, every interaction for one thing: approval. Do they like me? Am I impressing them? Am I fitting in? Am I enough in their eyes? And the exhausting part isn't the scanning. It's the shape-shifting, the way we twist and contort ourselves into whatever version of us we think the room wants to see. We become chameleons, not out of creativity, but out of fear. Fear that the real version of us isn't good enough to be accepted. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever walked away from a conversation and realized you didn't say a single thing you actually believed? That the entire interaction was a performance? That performance has a cost. And the cost is you, the real you, buried under layers of who you think you're supposed to be. The applause trap. Here's the problem with living for approval. It works, at least at first. When you say what people want to hear, they smile. When you look how people expect you to look, they compliment you. When you achieve what society says you should achieve, they applaud. And that applause feels incredible for about 5 minutes. Then it fades, and you need more. So you perform again, you shapeshift again, you abandon yourself again, and the cycle continues. It's like a drug. The high gets shorter, and the cost gets higher. Eventually, you've given so much of yourself away trying to earn other people's approval that you don't even know who you are without it. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what do I actually want? Not what my parents want, not what my friends expect, not what social media says I should chase. What do I want? If that question feels hard to answer, it's because you've been answering everyone else's version of it for so long that your own voice got buried. But it's still there, under the noise, under the performance, quietly waiting for you to listen. Finding worth from within your worth is not a verdict that other people deliver. It's not something you earn through performance, beauty, achievement, or people-pleasing. Your worth is inherent. You were born with it. It was yours before you accomplished anything, before anyone approved of you, before you even understood the concept. You don't need permission to take up space. You don't need a standing ovation to validate your existence. You don't need everyone to like you in order to like yourself. Some people won't understand you. That's okay. You're not for everyone, and everyone is not for you. The people who matter, the ones who truly deserve a seat in your life, are the ones who love the version of you that shows up without a script. So stop auditioning for people who haven't earned a vote in your life. Stop shrinking so others feel tall. Stop silencing your truth so others feel comfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. Your authenticity is not an inconvenience. It's a gift. And anyone who can't handle the real you was never really with you in the first place. Chapter 14. The story you keep telling. Letting go of your old identity. There's a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it's the version that failed that exam. The version that got left behind. The version that made that terrible decision at 23. The version that believed they were broken because someone else couldn't love them properly. That version taught you something. It survived something. It matters. But it is not who you are today. And yet, so many of us keep living as if it is. We keep introducing ourselves through our wounds. I'm the one who can't trust. I'm the one who always gets hurt. I'm not good with people. I'm not smart enough for that. These aren't truths. They're old stories we've told so many times that they feel like facts. Have you ever described yourself using a label that came from your worst experience instead of your best qualities? Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I always," or "I never," about yourself, and realized you were quoting a belief that was formed during the lowest point of your life? That's the old identity talking, and it's time to let it retire. You are not who you were. Growth requires shedding. A snake doesn't grow by keeping its old skin. A tree doesn't reach the sky by clinging to last year's leaves. And you don't become who you're meant to be by holding on to who you used to be. Letting go of your old identity is uncomfortable because it means stepping into uncertainty. If I'm not the broken one, then who am I? If I'm not the victim, what's my story? If I release the pain that defined me, what's left? What's left is you, the real you, unscripted, undefined by your past. Free to become whoever you choose. You don't owe your old story loyalty. You can honor what you've been through without being chained to it. You can say, "That happened to me, but it is not me." And you can walk forward into a version of yourself that your past self would be proud of. That's not betrayal. That's evolution. And evolution is what you were designed for. Chapter 15. Letting go of self-doubt. Trusting who you're becoming. There's a question that self-doubt asks on repeat. One single question that has stopped more dreams, silenced more voices, and sabotaged more lives than almost anything else. But what if I can't? 4 words. That's all it takes. 4 words, and suddenly the idea that excited you 5 minutes ago feels impossible. 4 words, and the confidence you were building crumbles like wet paper. 4 words, and you're back in the corner watching other people live the life you want, convinced that it's meant for them but not for you. But what if I can't? Has that question ever stopped you? Has it ever sat on your chest at the exact moment you were about to do something brave and whispered just loud enough to make you hesitate? Here's what I want you to do the next time that question shows up. Answer it, but not with the answer self-doubt wants. Answer it with the truth. What if I can't? Then I'll learn. I'll adjust. I'll try differently. I'll ask for help. I'll stumble and get back up and try again. Because that's what I've always done. Every single time life knocked me down, I got back up. Maybe not gracefully, maybe not quickly, but I got up. And that track record, that history of surviving everything that tried to break you, that's not nothing. That's everything. That's proof that you are far more capable than your doubt gives you credit for. Self-doubt tells you to look at the gap between where you are and where you want to be. But courage tells you to look at the distance between where you started and where you are now. Look at that distance. Really look at it. You've come so far, and you did it while carrying doubt on your back the entire time. Imagine how far you could go if you finally set it down. You don't need certainty to move forward. You just need willingness. Willingness to be imperfect. Willingness to not know all the answers. Willingness to trust that the person you're becoming is someone worth betting on. Because they are. You are. Chapter 16. The Art of Letting Go. A final reflection. We've walked a long road together. We've talked about the thoughts that won't stop spinning, the inner critic that never shuts up, the emotional baggage you've been carrying for years, the overthinking that steals your sleep, the people you needed to let go of even though it broke your heart, the guilt and shame that made you feel like you owed the world a permanent apology, the fear of change that kept you stuck in a life that was too small for you, the perfectionism that made you feel like nothing was ever enough, the forgiveness that set you free even though they never said sorry, the control you thought was keeping you safe but was actually keeping you trapped, the fear that told you to stay small, the approval you chased at the cost of your own identity. That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of years of carrying things that were never meant to be permanent. And if you've made it this far, if you've stayed through every chapter, every story, every uncomfortable question, then I need you to know something. You're already letting go. Right now, in this moment. Just by being willing to look at these things honestly, you've already started the process. You've already taken the hardest step, which is admitting that something needs to change. What letting go really is letting go is not a single moment. It's not a switch you flip or a line you cross. It's a practice, a daily, messy, imperfect, sometimes frustrating practice. Some days you'll feel free and light and clear. Other days, the old thoughts will come back. The old guilt will knock on the door. The old fear will whisper in your ear. And on those days, you don't need to panic. You don't need to think you've failed. You just need to choose again. Choose peace over chaos. Choose presence over worry. Choose growth over stagnation. Choose yourself over the version of you that everyone else expects. And keep choosing. Again and again and again. Not because it's easy, but because you're worth it. The person you're becoming, close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. Not the version of you that has everything figured out. Not the version that's achieved every goal and solved every problem. Just a version of you that's a little lighter, a little kinder to yourself, a little less afraid of the unknown, a little more willing to trust the journey. That version of you is not a fantasy. They're not a distant possibility. They're the natural result of every small choice you make from this moment forward. Every time you pause instead of spiral. Every time you speak gently to yourself instead of harshly. Every time you let something go instead of gripping it until your knuckles turn white. You're building that person right now. With every breath, every choice, every tiny act of courage, what you deserve. You deserve to wake up without the weight of yesterday pressing down on your chest. You deserve to go to sleep without rehearsing tomorrow's problems. You deserve to look in the mirror and see someone worthy of love, kindness, and second chances. You deserve relationships that don't drain you, dreams that don't scare you into inaction, a mind that works for you, not against you, a heart that's free to feel without being punished for it. You deserve to laugh deeply, to cry honestly, to rest without guilt, to try without guarantees, to fail without shame, to succeed without apology. You deserve all of it, not someday, not when you've earned it, not when you become some perfect, polished version of yourself that doesn't exist. Now, today, as you are. One last breath. So take one more breath with me, a deep one. Feel your lungs expand. Feel the air fill you up. And as you exhale, let something go. You don't have to name it. You don't have to understand it. Just let something release. That breath is a promise to yourself, a promise that you will keep choosing lightness over heaviness, presence over absence, freedom over fear, not perfectly, not without setbacks, but consistently, bravely, compassionately. This has been The Art of Letting Go, inspired by the powerful reflections of Nick Trenton. His work reminds us that healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming everything that was never really you in the first place. If these words touched something inside you, share them with someone who needs to hear them. You never know who's silently carrying a weight they're too afraid to put down. Your peace begins the moment you choose to let go. Until next time, stay present, stay grounded, stay free, and remember, you were never meant to carry it all. You were meant to live